Hello everyone and welcome to the Constructive Criticism Network. This network is here to help you improve at Magic the Gathering at every level. From Pauper Leagues to Top 1000 Mythic, we've got you covered. If you want to hear the entire network, head on over to our sponsor at puremtgo.com, where you can hear each and every show, each and every week, and check out their sponsor, MTGO Traders, and tell them that the CCMTG Network sent you. Now sit back, enjoy the show. From YouTube, podcasts, and more, here's this week's episode from ConstructiveCriticism.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 151 of the Common Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm joined by our co-host, Brad.
What's up, everybody?
Before we got too far into this episode, I just want to remind everyone that Common Knowledge and all of the podcasts on the Constructive Criticism Network are sponsored by puremtgo.com. If you would like to support the show, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel, and check out the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/common knowledge. With that out of the way, let's get on with the podcast for the week.
Hello, buddy.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's always going well. I had a weirdly busy week, I guess. Yeah. What about yourself?
Wasn't super busy, but it was the last 2 to 4 weeks-ish. I've been going out of town for work, like a day and a half, 2 days a week. It breaks up the middle of the week because I'll go either Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever weather and distance, kind of delegate or dictate. But it does break it up, and it's a nice little mix of office and field and all that. But it makes the week feel really chaotic and busy, even though it's not.
Right, it's the same amount of time dedicated, just
a lot more logistics, I guess. Yeah. But it was good. Same kind of work, same stuff. Just traveling a little bit. I was up in Kirksville, pretty much all over the northeastern quadrant of Missouri this past week, Tuesday and Wednesday.
Now, I know that you said that it's weather dependent. Did you guys get any winter weather this weekend?
Yeah, it came in actually, I think the day after I got home. We didn't get a whole lot down here. We got the plunging temperatures and some freezing drizzle or freezing fog, whatever they want to call it. We may have got a quarter inch of snow, but I know up north where I was working, where I'd come from the day before, I think they got almost a full 6 or 8 inches.
Right.
So screw that.
They were calling for 2 to 5 inches in Murfreesboro, where I live.
Yeah, what'd you guys make out with?
Not 2 to 5. Much less. The roads really weren't even that bad. I think they did a pretty good job of preparing for the 2 to 5 inches.
Yeah.
So when, less than an inch came, it wasn't rough at all.
There wasn't it, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, the most danger is lingering ice, where the weather starts to warm up, the sun comes out, but people will just refuse to pour hot water on their steps or whatever.
Right.
To finish melting it. I went to my sister's today for a little bit to watch basketball game, and I took one step on her step and almost just fell.
Yeah.
And busted my face on the concrete. I didn't, thankfully, but yeah, that to me is something that I have a hard time comprehending.
Yeah.
It's all right, everything's melted. The first time is understandable, but it's at what point did you notice that in front of your house is not as slippery as the rest of the world?
Right.
I don't know. Maybe it's just a small pet peeve for me, but it's I personally would not enjoy thinking about whether or not I'm going to die every time I leave for a week.
Yeah. How long are you going to let the safety hazard just exist?
Yeah, exactly. You would never let that go at work, right? If you worked in retail or whatever, right? And there was a ladder leaning on a busted shelf. You might let it slide the first time you walk past it. But whenever people whenever people started to use the ladder a little bit to get something on the shelf next to it, be hey, move that ladder.
Especially customers oh, it must be out here for us. I like that shirt up there. I'm going to go get that one on this rickety, splintery wooden ladder.
I guess that's my mini rant. Normally here, we would jump into what decks we're playing now and kind of how the decks of the month are going. But I guess we have a show announcement to make first. I don't know if you want to lead off with it or if you want me to.
I think you can. It's not necessarily episode announcement, but it is definitely a show announcement.
Yeah. So, Brad, you reached out to us, being me and Spencer, recently about wanting to take a step back from the show. Just, feelings on Pauper haven't necessarily changed, but the way that you are engaging with it is starting to change. So, yeah, just basically Brad is going to be taking a step back from the show, not entirely. We still want him to come for set reviews, post-ban analysis, and as well as just like any other fun episodes we can think of. But yeah, I guess if you want to take it from here, sort of talk about your feelings on Pauper and what has and has not changed.
Yeah, that's pretty much the long and short of it. I think it's sort of been brewing for a little while. I'm sure I'll reiterate some things that were in that little letter I sent to you and Spencer, but mostly it's kind of twofold. I'm stepping 99% of the way away from Magic Online Pauper and that format, that environment, that metagame, if you will. And I think by doing that, it would be sort of disingenuous to continue as the co-host of a quote-unquote competitive Pauper show if I'm not actually playing competitive Pauper.
Right.
If that makes sense. But yeah, just that whole hyper-competitive environment that exists on that particular platform, I'm just not interested in engaging with either ever again, or at least for sure not in any time in the future. It was a hard decision. It's something I've been thinking about for a while. Because MTGO is a big part of my life, especially the last couple of years with the pandemic, and we couldn't leave the house, and that's all we could do is play online and stuff. So it wasn't an easy decision, but it wasn't necessarily like a mental health decision either. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not like all depressed over it or anything. The only real issues that I saw were like the last 2 or 3 weeks. Every time I fired up MTGO, it was like, as it was loading and as I was putting in my password, it was just like internally I was sighing like, oh God, here we go.
Right.
Trying to brew a deck was a chore and feeling like, okay, I got to play this deck of the month 5 times today, or it's not fair to the listeners. That felt like a job, which, yeah, it's not fair to the listeners. It's not fair to you or the show, but it's also kind of not fair to myself that I was doing that, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So yeah, that's pretty much where it's at. I'm not leaving Pauper at all. I'm not leaving Twitter. I'm not, dropping off the face of the earth or anything like that. I'm just sort of stepping back from that particular platform, and by extension, in all fairness, the show, really. I'm still going to hang out with the community and talk to them and interact with them. I'll probably get pretty big into like maybe Arena Pauper, see what that's all about, if I really get the itch to play some games. And then, of course, I've always got the shop, too. I can go up there and probably any day of the week and find a Pauper match or two. And then we have the regular Saturday events as well. So my main focus is going to be paper events, local events, and probably like Pauper variants, Pauper Commander, PDH, singleton events, whatever. Just crazy stuff that people come up with.
And, I think the only other main thing that I want to say on it, well, 2, is 1, that does mean that we're looking for a new co-host.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we've thought about a few people, but, if there's somebody that you think I should reach out to, you being the listeners, definitely let us know.
Hit us up on Twitter. You could hit me up, too. I told Spencer and yourself that I'd help you guys look. I'm not trying to ghost anybody or disappear. Like you said, I'll probably be back for set review episodes or PDH episodes or ban announcements or just whatever. Pretty much, so.
Yeah. And I guess the only other thing is I don't want anybody to think that this changes our relationship.
Sure.
Brad has become one of my best friends, especially online, I think in the past year or so. Really just, we haven't really ever talked like daily or anything, but like, shoot each other like a couple of messages every couple of days, interact online in communities. And, being able to talk about things like fatherhood, magic, metal music, is something that I definitely cherish. And that's something that like is going to continue going forward. Like, to the listeners of the show, like we still have a great relationship, and I expect us to continue to have that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like I'm punching my ticket and getting out of here. No, it's like you said in the pre-show, we'll probably still play some games online maybe. And yeah, who knows? Whatever. It's not going anywhere, basically.
that being said, I know that you're stepping back from MTGO, but I do know that you've at least been playing MTGO this past week. Has anything been going on there?
I have. I've been playing pretty much up until like Friday. I've been playing. I actually was jamming pretty hard. I had picked Rakdos Madness for my deck of the month, and I had actually 2 different deck lists that I was waffling back and forth in between. So I got a bunch of games in with that. This was pre-ban, obviously, and it felt really good. And I had Disciple in one of the lists and not in the other list. So obviously the one with Disciple was stronger, obviously, just because that's a strong card as it is. It more focused on that sort of damage. The other one was grindier. It was fine, but it was still really strong. Just blood tokens are strong. Game objects in general are now just a strong thing to have on your side in most formats. I think Madness is really good with the blood tokens and being able to discard and all that stuff. And then after that, after the ban announcement, I brewed up a mono blue deck that I was messing around with. It was pretty much 14 creatures, 27 counter spells / bounce spells, and then 19 lands or whatever the math ends up being. It was literally just counter spells, boomerangs, Eye of Nowhere, which is basically another boomerang, Vapor Snag sometimes, just anything to Spreading Seas, even put that in there. So anything to throw them off, any sort of disruption or throw them off their game, some tempo-oriented plays. Yeah, outside of that, that's been my MTGO. I actually, it's funny that I've come to this particular decision because I think in the last 3 or 4 weeks I've played more MTGO than all year so far.
Right. Yeah.
That's how it goes, I guess. But
well, heck yeah, man. I know I was personally interested a lot in the mono blue deck that you were posting about. I think you and I actually talked about like how good Spreading Seas was in passing in one of the Discord servers that we're in. Yeah, no, that deck sounds like a lot of fun.
It is. I haven't actually landed on a list. I initially, I guess it wasn't fair to say I started playing it after the bans. I initially brewed it up sort of out of rage because in the tournament practice room I was running into nothing but galvanic relay decks, storm decks, and that's the only thing I could think that would beat it. So I brewed this up, just a ton of counter spells and bounce spells and things to disrupt their mana and just a few creatures, and I tore up galvanic relay storm decks in the tournament practice room with it, and it felt good. And then the ban happened, so I tweaked it a little bit, so it's not as good now in this particular new meta, but it's still fun. It's similar. It plays a lot like the mono blue decks we have now. It's just more angry.
Yeah. It's one of the more effective ways to brew, I think, especially in like you mentioned earlier, like a competitive online metagame, is figure out a particular problem that you're looking to solve and then think, what's the best way I can solve it? And it's really interesting, right? Like what different people's minds go to. Because if you were to tell me like, hey, you just need to build a deck that just beats up on Relay Storm.
Right.
Like my brain would also immediately go to, oh, we need to punish their mana. And like, I would just play like green-red land destruction.
Okay.
Just 4 of each. Like I'd probably play the teamer list and literally cut Fire Ice and Mold Drifter and just play like quick aggressive creatures and land destruction.
And just punish their mana base.
Yeah, exactly. And like you had a similar idea of like we need to bounce their tap lands while applying pressure with these creatures.
Right. Yep.
But it's funny, like you give 2 different people like the same problem and they come up with the similar idea for a solution, but still get in totally different places for it.
Yeah, the paths are totally different, but the end result's kind of the same.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's what you've been playing. As for what I've been playing, is I've actually been playing Teamer Land Destruction. It's funny, with less storm around. I still started off with a just straight up land destruction build where, I'm going all in on Thermokarst and Acid Moss. I was playing 4 of each, less mid-rangey creatures, just those and Cascaders, as well as, removal. So, the removal can hit all their low to the ground stuff. They're never going to get to their end game because I'm going to beat up on their lands.
Right.
And by the time they can catch up to go to their end game, I'm playing, 6/3s with haste.
Right. There's not much you can do about that.
Yeah, the main issue with this is Thermokarst is not very good versus bridges.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I found myself siding out of those a lot and back into a more mid-rangey deck against 10 to 12 bridge decks.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was running into that problem, it's like, all right, I'm going to go back to just the 2 thermokarst main deck, 4 acid moss, and I'm going to find a way to get owlbears into this deck.
I love an
So
owlbear.
trimmed on fire ices to like just basically decided Spread and Lightning Bolt is enough to stop like most decks early plays.
Mm-hmm.
Trimmed on most of the Mold Drifters to play some owlbears and some pack mates in the main deck. That's kind of where I am right now with Teamer. I was actually going to play it in the challenge today and ended up waking up way late.
Way too late.
Yeah. Slept in probably later than I ever have.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of a lie. I woke up at like 4 a.m. and stayed up for like, maybe like an hour and a half.
So you just took a long nap.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not ready to be awake. I decided at like 5:30. It's like, so I'll just go to sleep and wake up for the challenge. By the time I woke up, like, then I remembered it's like, oh man, there's a basketball game today I could watch. I can also play in the Pauper Challenge. It's like, I don't have the mental capacity just waking up now to do both.
Right.
So I'm watching basketball.
Yep. Not a bad choice.
Right.
It was good basketball too.
Yeah, it was. Tennessee basketball. I'm a very big Tennessee fan, and basketball is my favorite sport. They did something that I've literally been waiting my entire life for them to do, which is win the SEC tournament. Hasn't happened since 1979. So now that it has happened, I, of course, immediately was very happy about it. Texted, all my family who cares.
Right.
And then immediately was like, well, I want more.
Right. So that's out of the way. What's next?
Yeah. It's an issue. It's not really an issue. It's very natural, but people are never satisfied. And I'm amongst those people.
Yeah. College sports are pretty big down there, right? Because I think in Tennessee as a whole, you really only have like the Titans as professional sports, right?
Yeah. So Nashville has the Titans and Preds.
Predators. There we go. Yep. I knew that's one.
The Preds are pretty big, I would say, especially, they went on like a Stanley Cup run, a couple of years ago now. Titans are, of course, really big. I would say that college sports are bigger because Tennessee is pretty iconic in the college football world, or at least used to be. They haven't been good in my entire life. But, in the 80s and 90s, I would say that they were like a pretty big national brand.
Right.
And then as for basketball, basketball in Tennessee, like we've had Memphis, which is like a historically pretty good program. Vanderbilt's okay. Tennessee has been on stretches where they're good and stretches where they're just terrible. Right now, they're on one of those good stretches since Rick Barnes has become our coach. But then we also have the Memphis Grizzlies, which I swear it's very frustrating. I live in Middle Tennessee, so not necessarily near Memphis. Mm-hmm. And you go to like sports apparel stores here, can't find like anything Memphis. It's very frustrating because that's like, that should be everybody's like basketball team in Tennessee, you would think. Yeah. But it's like a lot of people, at least in Middle Tennessee, are so disconnected that they just end up as like Atlanta fans or whatever. So what I'm getting at is like professional sports are like still pretty big here, but college sports are definitely dominant. And then it also helps that the colleges people are fans of in Tennessee, it's more ubiquitous, right? Like if you're in Middle Tennessee, you're going to be a Tennessee or a Vanderbilt fan. And then like if you like either one of those, you'll also root for like MTSU because, MTSU is just like a smaller school in Murfreesboro.
Yeah. I actually totally forgot about the Grizzlies.
Yeah. But if you're in like near Memphis, you'll be a Memphis football fan who like has like a pretty emerging program. You'll be a Memphis basketball fan. And then that's what you got. So just, I think the ubiquitous nature of everybody in Tennessee is a fan of one of those three teams makes it seem a lot bigger here.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I was just curious about that. I've never not grown up where we had, the legacy of Cardinal baseball or Blues hockey or whatever, you know what I mean? And that's just like in St. Louis, we don't really have basketball. Our colleges, or at least local colleges, aren't known for basketball. We got Mizzou. That's more central Missouri, closer to Kansas City, maybe. But as far as like St. Louis goes, it was baseball and hockey or nothing. I mean, there was football in the 80s or whatever, and the Rams. But so I just, it's in my mind, where you live is like the opposite of what I grew up with. So I'm just curious. Yeah,
for sure. I grew up in a pretty big like college sports household. I will say too that like the smaller colleges, so like, I'll go to MTSU games. Not regularly, but frequently, both, football, basketball, and sometimes baseball. And like going to those is very akin to going to like a house show for music. Where it's like a lot of the people here like don't necessarily care about this thing wholly, but they care a lot in this moment.
Right.
Where it's like, you'll go to an MTSU game and like very few people there are like actual MTSU fans. Like that's their like ride or die team.
Mm-hmm.
But there are like a lot of people that like just like really live for the moment, and they like get just as crazy as fans of a lot of the bigger schools or professional teams.
Yeah.
So it's very fun in that way. But we are not a college basketball podcast, although maybe we should be.
Yeah.
So I guess
pretty good.
I guess we can kind of get on to our main topic.
Yeah, which we already touched on a little bit earlier, but we're a few days late. But yeah, we had a big sudden surprise band announcement from WotC last week. It literally caught everybody by surprise. Like even the people that lurk out the URL they put different dates in there to see when it's changed or whatever. Even caught all those people by surprise too.
It was a big one. It made me pretty happy, I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it made you feel. I guess first, there were 5 bands total, 3 in Pauper. So Pioneer and Modern had Luris of the Dreamed In band.
Yep.
But then in Pauper, we had 3 cards band, Galvanic Relay, Disciple of the Vault, and then I guess actually this wasn't a band, this was an unbanned.
We had 3 cards announced on the
Yeah. Yeah. How were you feeling whenever you read the announcement?
I was pretty happy. Galvanic Relay is one that I think it was the day that Chatterstorm was banned. People were saying, well, that's not really going to be the problem. Galvanic Relay's better than Chatterstorm is anyway. So that one's kind of been a problem for sure the last month or so. I think it took a while for people to land on the proper deck to play that in. But once they did, it was pretty brutal. So I'm happy about that one. Disciple of the Vault, I think I'm indifferent on. I don't play it a lot. I didn't play the new versions of Affinity a whole lot as it is anyway. I never did brew with the card because generally, before the last year or two, we just didn't have a ton of artifacts to sacrifice. We didn't have any sort of all these game objects and tokens and blood tokens and treasure tokens and all this other stuff. So I never really brewed with it anyway. I know it's powerful. It's a very good card. I'm glad it's banned because the way it was being used. Outside of that, I'm sort of indifferent on it. And then Expedition Map is off the list and back into the format. And I believe they were basically saying that banning Bonder's Ornament and Prophetic Prism made Tron disappear, and they didn't really want that. They weren't expecting that to happen. They don't want it to happen. They want Tron to be in the format in some capacity. So they brought Expedition Map back, and if that reasoning works out, I'm okay with it. So overall, I think I'm probably 8 out of 10 on this ban announcement. What about you?
I, like you, am an 8 out of 10 on this ban. I was pretty happy with the Galvanic Relay ban for 2 reasons. One, I thought that deck was ridiculous, like absurdly strong. But 2, I'm not very good at playing those sorts of decks. Yeah.
Yeah, me
so
either.
It's like this deck is very strong, and I'm going to lose half the matchups anyways, despite like I played the deck, not tons. I think it was because I just didn't particularly enjoy it. But like whenever I would watch other people play it, I'd sit down, I'd watch somebody play the Storm deck, and I'd be thinking to myself, like I'd like pause the YouTube video or like mute the stream or whatever and go, what is like my thought process here?
Okay.
And then I'd unmute the stream, unpause the video. It's like my thought process is not what this person's was, and this person is like currently like killing it with this deck. Clearly, like I need to adapt here, and my brain just struggled to adapt.
Right.
So it's something that I want to work on, but in the short term, I'm glad I don't have to.
Right.
Like I'm glad like I can work at like a Storm deck without feeling like I'm like eking value of like, all right, this is the best deck. Why am I not winning?
Right.
Now the thought is going to be whenever I play like Cycling Storm, like I don't think this deck is the best, although it's pretty good. Like I can focus on just improving without focusing on the result.
Right.
Which I try my hardest not to, but everybody focuses on the result.
Yeah, you're going to regardless.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. With Disciple, I would say that I'm happy but hesitant on that ban. So I'm happy that Disciple got banned. I felt like Affinity needed to be hit
again.
Yeah. I really don't like the bridges.
You don't like them because of affinity, or you weren't a fan of them at all? Like, you know what I mean?
I don't like them because of affinity. And I think that deck is going to continue to be one of the top decks in Pauper until they're gone. I understand why they exist in the way that they do, and I don't want them to like selectively ban them. It's a challenging thing because like the fact that they are indestructible makes them good, and the fact that they're artifacts make them good. And I don't have a problem with artifact lands. I don't have a problem with indestructible lands. Like I really like land destruction decks. So like maybe I'm just secretly salty, but I don't think I am. Like I think it's the fact that artifact and indestructible are like put together in a way that makes it to where like, okay, so we can play this like bridge mana base. And like one of the cool things about playing like the snow duels, for example, right, is more decks get access to cards like Skred or Snow
Sure.
Payoff.
Yep.
But with this, right, it's like, okay, so one of the benefits of having access to indestructible lands is you get the Cleansing Wildfire payoff.
Yep.
But also artifact lands. So you get a second payoff of you still get like a premium red removal spell.
Yeah.
Galvanic Blast.
Because for
it's,
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's nothing to play like the shell around it, which is good, which is just like, like a few like value artifacts to really get it going.
Yep.
And both of these are going to make it to where there's this other aggro or combo deck or however you're choosing to build affinity that gets to reap the rewards of that as well as make their core game plan stronger.
Yeah.
So it just leads to you can change the individual cards all you want, but the game plan of it is just always the same. Like, I don't really care if you're playing 4 Mirror Enforcers and, 4 Frogmites, or if you're going to play like 2 Gearseeker Serpents and 4 Mirror Enforcers. Like, the overall game plan of this deck is clearly the same.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
You're totally right. I don't know. The bridges are a problem. The bridges are probably the problem. I'm really torn on it because I really enjoy them, like, from a non-competitive player, from a brewer. I like their potential. I think they're really cool to have access to. It's just unfortunate what they enable, basically.
I think the main point of what I was saying is, like, I almost wish that they were 2 different cycles of lands. Like, the bridges were artifact lands that could be destroyed, and then we just had indestructible dual lands with no other payoff. Like, I don't want anyone to ever play, like, Meandering River.
Right.
Like, I'm fine with an indestructible land. I just don't want those to be artifact.
Yeah, they really are kind of the best of everything.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And like you said, coming from like a brewer's perspective, it kind of makes you sad how good they are. I agree. Because like there's a lot of stuff that I like. Like I really like the Cleansing Wildfire aspect of it, right? Like I think that card's good and fun. And I thought that card was going to be good even without the bridges.
Yeah.
But
it just kind of goes along with everything else with the last year plus, even into the future a little bit. What WotC is doing, it's just they're very, whether it's intentional or not, they're very artifact focused right now, and they have been for a while, and they're going to continue to be. Whether we mentioned it earlier, whether it's treasure tokens or blood tokens or experimental synthesizers, or you got the Brothers War set coming soon. I can't imagine there's not going to be a handful of extremely playable pauper artifacts in that set. So you just add in the bridges, and it's part of that whole line there.
Yeah, I agree. That being said, like I also, upon like reading the reasoning, like it's not like I hate the Disciple of the Vault ban, because there's a lot of things about Affinity that's too good, and I understand like wanting to keep the bridges for as long as possible in the format because they are fun cards.
They are. And
it's just, I think eventually they're going to have to be banned anyways. And I'm very much a person that likes ripping those Band-Aids off. Like, honestly, like I know that some people might think it's like a downside of like the thought that like, oh, Pauper's never healthy. Look at how often they have bans. To me, it's like, I'm very much pro keeping a format healthy with bans. Like, I wouldn't mind if they just like banned random cards like once a year.
Sure. Yeah, just to prove a point.
Yeah, or like took like random stuff off of the ban list every now and again just to test out like different configurations.
Yeah, I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the potential advantages of having a Pauper format panel. Obviously, there are downsides. to that of some formats are going to be better than others. Once you go down that rabbit hole, no one will ever agree again on what the correct configuration is,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. Then ended on an expedition map unban, which I'm happy with because people can tutor up Tron lands. And, it also makes it to where they can tutor up things like Majuka Bog, Mortuary Mire, like Espertron, I think is going to be something that could be
Yeah,
big.
I saw Campo post about that on Twitter today. Ended up with a 5 with Espertron. He said it's pretty much the black was just for removal spells and Denrova Horror. But nevertheless, Esper is Esper, Tron is Tron. It was a full, from what I remember, it was a full Stonehorn Dignitary package, late to dinner package, Denrova Horror, expedition maps. I mean, it was really sweet, but kind of disgusting.
Yeah, that's, I guess, sort of my thoughts on the bands. Was there anything else that you had on them?
On the bands, no. The only thing that they said in the article really that we didn't touch on, I mean, I think you touched on it a little bit, is apparently the PFP and Gavin altogether, they did talk about the bridges again, whether or not to ban them. And they did say they're not afraid to ban them, but they just haven't yet because they are enabling pretty much the only control decks we have in the meta at this point.
I understand that. I guess, like, if they went away, that would also lead to other decks becoming popular, and then control decks could become good against those decks.
Right. I mean, we had control decks before the bridges were printed.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. Yeah. But on a personal, like, selfish level, I would hate to ever see them banned because I would lose, like, 6 decks out of my battle box.
Yeah. But yeah, I would hate that for you, too.
That'd be annoying.
Right.
But other than a minor annoyance, I would trade a happy meta for a minor annoyance.
I guess, that's it for our main topic. Before we got into the outro, though, just wanted to say one last thing about you leaving the show.
Sure.
I really appreciate the impact that you had on Common Knowledge and on me as a person. I feel like we made tons of good episodes together, made a few not great ones.
Sure.
But overall, it's been a great time. I really feel like I've made a really good friend through this endeavor, which, is part of what Pauper is all about, coming together with the community to do something that we all love. And, I'm really grateful again for your friendship and everything that you're able to do for Common Knowledge, the Constructive Criticism Network. I very much value our personal relationship, and I'm very happy that it is where it is.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I do too. But it just sort of goes along the same lines. Like, I built a Twitter community based on Pauper, and I feel that's kind of what I built with you and Spencer, and the show is more friendship and community driven than actual, like, playing Pauper competitively driven. Mm-hmm. And I don't want the show to lose anything because of that, because I'm not playing competitively anymore, and I'm not going to be super concerned with challenges and leagues and all that stuff anymore. So the show will be better without that particular part of me on there, and without a lot of my rambling. Sometimes that'll be shored up easily. But yeah, it's been great. I've loved it. It's been, I think, 15 months, right about that, almost a year and a half, maybe.
Give or take.
Yep, give or take. Bunch of episodes, probably 50 or so episodes. It's been great. I'm not getting out of the content creation world. I'm sure I'm still going to stream games of some variety, probably Pauper, maybe through Arena, or if I get the wild hair to play a Cards Realm League or some other player run event on MTGO, I might stream that. Maybe get into more casual podcasting, that sort of thing. But yeah, I do value your friendship. I think it's been awesome. I think we hit a pretty good stride, like almost right out of the gate, after I got rid of the nerves of podcasting for the first time, and we got past that hurdle. I think it's been pretty smooth since then. And yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I just won't see you every Sunday night. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. And on that note, it's going to do it. This episode of Common Knowledge.
Yep.
If you want to get in touch with us, you can find me on Twitter at JustGuyDad. Brad, where can they find you?
On Twitter at Pauper_B, and very infrequently now on MTGO. But if you find me there, I'll be at BradDrackV.
Or you can shoot us an email over at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. If you have any questions on the Pauper format, MTGO, or anything else, you can email us, leave a comment down below, or hit us up on Twitter. Thanks again to our sponsor, PureMTGO.com, as well as the Constructed Criticism Network, for letting us be a part of it. And last, but certainly not least, thank you for listening. Take very good care of each other.
And never stop being true to yourself.